Well, hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing out there tonight? Welcome to another episode of Mannimal Research. I am joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Mr. Ricky Weaver. How you doing out there, Ricky?
Doing good, man. Hope everybody else is doing good today.
Yeah, man, it's crazy out there. You were telling me some news right before we come on that I hadn't heard yet. Maybe other people hadn't heard it either. You want to share it?
Apparently, I was watching TV earlier tonight, and they announced that the country singer Joe Diffie had had passed away uh, due to complications of the coronavirus. He had been diagnosed, according to his publicist, he'd been diagnosed yesterday and passed away today.
A day after being diagnosed.
Right,
How old was Joe Dippy?
61.
It's scary, man. Scary stuff.
Hey man, yeah, it's scary because tomorrow I turn 62, and
Well, happy birthday, Ricky.
well, thank you. uh,
Yeah, everybody out there, y'all take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, watch out for people. Be good to everybody. It's getting scary out there. Well, Ricky, we had us an expedition planned this weekend, but it fell through, unfortunately. But right before we came on, we were making plans, me and you and Mr. Duckworth and Blake Duckworth, and I asked Walls. I don't know if he's going to be able to make it, but we're going to try to get out there at least one night this week during the week, and get some stuff done. So maybe by next week we'll have some stuff to report.
right, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you hadn't been out done anything, have you?
No, not since the last time me and Blake went to Blue Ridge, and I got some info yesterday too from uh, the United States Forestry Service. Again, they've shut down all trails, all trailheads leading into the Appalachian Trail. They've shut all those completely down, and they said that they had advised their rangers that if they encountered anybody uh, that was hiking the trails, to immediately pull them off the trails and take them to quarantine areas.
Really?
Yeah,
My goodness, man, it's crazy. I ain't never seen nothing like this. All right, well, we got a special guest coming on tonight, Mr. Dan Lindholm. He was going to come on and share his encounter that he had back in Pinnacle Rock years ago. I have to get exactly when the date was. I don't have my notes in front of me. We ran a little bit late tonight. That's my fault. Sorry about that. We're getting a late start, so I'm a little unprepared. But we'll bring Dan on, let him share his encounters with us. He's been doing some research out there and had a few sightings actually. First one is a really good one. I'm excited to have him on. You got anything else before we bring him on, Ricky?
nah, let's go ahead and bring him on.
All right. Dan, how's it going, buddy?
Going good. How you guys doing?
Doing well. Doing well.
All right. Glad to be here.
Hey, Dan, pronounce your last name for everybody.
It's Lindholm. You had it right.
Lindholm. Okay. All right. Well, when was your sighting back on Pinnacle Rock?
Way back in 1986.
86. I was thinking it was the early 90s, but it was before then.
Yeah. Now I'm an old man, and this is right after I graduated from high school.
Okay.
So it was a long time ago.
Okay. Well, before that encounter, what was your knowledge of Bigfoot? Were you a believer, or was that what sparked your interest? And all of that being asked, just take it from there and walk us into that first encounter.
Well, that's really a great place to start because what I'd heard or what I knew about Bigfoot at the time actually really played into my thought process and my brain when I saw Bigfoot. because see, I'd seen In Search Of, the old Leonard Nimoy show back in the 70s. You know, they had a few Bigfoot shows, and that sparked my interest in Bigfoot. And then, you know, I went to the library and I got, you know, all 2 books that had to do with something that was strange and different. I think there was a Loch Ness Monster and 1 Bigfoot book, you know. So and then, you know, it was more or less just a passing fancy. Besides, you know, if there was a show on TV that talked about it or something, I would want to watch it. But, you know, I was just a kid. I didn't really think too much of it. And the In Search Of description was an upright ape. You know, it wasn't human-like. Supposedly, it was more like just like a gorilla that walks on 2 feet. You know, and that's kind of how they described how Bigfoot was. So then that leads into my first encounter when I saw one. It didn't look like what they said Bigfoot was supposed to look like. All right, what I saw was a wild man. He was huge. He was 8 foot tall and 4 feet wide. You know, there's no way it was a person, but that's what my mind was trying to tell me that it was just some wild, crazy guy that's living up in the woods. You know, because the face looked like a person. It did not look like an ape or a gorilla. You know,
So
what I mean? I saw the face. I saw him from about 30 feet away.
Wow.
By campfire light, mind you. And it was just and I'll tell you the details when we tell the story. But my friend kicked the fire and it blazed up. And at that moment, we were able to see from about 30 feet away, standing right next to a tree, this huge Bigfoot looking at us. And the facial features were very similar to a Native American in my eyes, and you know, it lends a lot of credence to the stories about them, you know, taking the Indian maidens and possibly interbreeding, you know, and this was on the West Coast where those stories are pretty prevalent, you know. So but what I saw was it was a wild man, you know. There wasn't a whole lot of facial hair. It was also real. That's kind of maybe what reminded me of a Native American, because a lot of them don't have a real thick beard, you know. Maybe just some sideburns, you know, and maybe just a little mustache right here. And that's what he had, this guy that I saw. And in my mind, I'm thinking he was probably about 50 years old, you know, an older gent. And his teeth were kind of messed up. It's great that I can tell these details about the actual the thing now, because whenever I tell the story, you know, other things happen. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time telling the story of getting into the details. But I saw his face for, I mean, it was like 2 seconds. The fire blazed up. The girl that was sitting right next to me reacted and said, "Oh my God!" And at that time, he went, "Oh," he made a big open, just like the native carvings, you know, where they show the big open mouth. That's what he was like. He was like, "Oh," and he jumped behind that tree. And about that time, the light went down, and we had no flashlights, no nothing. And we went over there, and you know, of course, he was gone by the time we got the fire back up and got some light. But back to the features, I will never forget that face. You know, that's what you're drawn to when you see any person or anything, is the face, you know. And I looked at that face, and I was like, I was looking at him eye to eye. And it's just like ingrained in my brain, even though, like I say, it was only like a couple seconds that I saw him. And I couldn't even tell you if he had nipples. I mean, seriously, I was staring right at his face for my entire, you know, little flash of an encounter. But I got a total sense of the size of this guy, you know, and just like huge and like built like everybody says, you know, like built like a weightlifter, like really, really buffed out and really big. And so that's a pretty good description of what I saw in my story. Then I can kind of skip over the whole stopping and trying to describe. So I appreciate that opportunity to tell you that.
Okay. All right. So go ahead, Rick.
Dan, could you tell when you saw this creature? I know you said you were looking right at its face, but as far as the could you see anything to do with the hands, arms on him, whether he actually had feet, body hair, or anything of that nature?
No, his whole body was exposed except for, like from the tree was right here, right next to his face was right next to the tree, so from here down on the one side was covered. But but like I say, I didn't look him up and down, in that couple seconds. I just zoned right in on his face and just stared at his face for that second that I had, and that's besides, just like I say, the sense of just the size of this thing. I mean, it was very intimidating, man. I mean, something like 8 feet tall, 4 feet wide. This thing was huge, and just standing that close, and like she said, oh my God. And I was like, yeah, I see it too. Man, it was something.
You just said, 8 foot tall and 4 foot wide. You just described a sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what was standing in front of you. It's something that big. That's very intimidating and has to be just terrifying.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and tell us what you were doing before and what all led up to this, and just go through the encounter, everything that you can remember.
All right, will do. So like I say, 1986, I just graduated high school a couple months prior. And I lived right in the little town of Upper Lake in Northern California, off of the Clear Lake. It's a big lake that all these towns go around it, and Upper Lake's one of them. So that's where I was going to school, and that's where I was living at the time. And there was a bridge across a little creek, only about 2 blocks from my house, and that was kind of where all the Upper Lake kids congregated every day to just, see what's going on. What could we do? We're all bored to death. So that's what we were doing. Is my friend Michael and I were down at the bridge just hanging out, and there was nobody else there at all, just Michael and I. And all of a sudden, my friend Les, he's coming driving down the road in his Jeep. And a little backstory, I'd seen him like the day before or something. I'd seen him, or 2 days, and he was driving at night with only one headlight. And I was like, dang, here comes Les. There's that crazy Les. Here he comes, and he had these 2 girls with him in his Jeep. And I was like, oh, what's up, Les? So Les pulls up and he says, hey, how's it going, guys? And the one girl I knew from my school, and the other girl I didn't know, she went to Lakeport, which was a nearby town, but I didn't know her at all. And so he says, we're going up to Pinnacle Rock, and you guys want to go? And I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. Because I loved it. I've been there several times, and it's just a really cool spot. It's at the very top of the mountain, and there's a real good view of Clear Lake and Mount Canocti and all the other mountains around there. It's real pretty. And if you turn around, there's a view back the other direction too. It's really a tall peak, and there's a rock right on the very top. There used to be an old fire lookout there, but the fire lookout's gone, and now it's just a rock with stairs going up and everything. It's cool as heck. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And he says, but we're going to have to stay the night because I don't have no headlights. And it's already like 5 o'clock at night right now. And it's like, oh, all right, well, we're like, well, I don't know. And he's like, well, I got a couple sleeping bags. And we're like, all right, what the heck? Let's do it. And just being kids. And it wasn't the wisest thing because, you don't think about it. It's all hot. It's August. And you get up to the top of those mountains and it's not so hot in the middle of the night up there. So anyway, so off we go. We're heading up to Pinnacle Rock and we're planning on staying the night. He's got no headlights now, like you said. And he had one little flashlight with us. And that was about all the supplies we had. And so we headed on up the mountain. And we get there and you go off of the main road and it's about probably a mile down this little fire trail. And it's real sketchy. You got to have a 4-wheel drive pretty much to get in there. And so we get all the way up in there by the rock. And when you get there, the road keeps going for maybe another quarter mile, probably more like only a couple hundred yards further down the road, and it's done. And it comes to a dead end that's like a cliff. And there's a really cool view there too. So when we get there, I say, let's go to the end of the road and go check it out. Let's just go look at that view before we come here for the rest of the night. And everybody else thought, no, man, let's just go up here. Right. We're already here. Let's go up here. And so the rest of the gang, there's 5 of us in total. The rest of the 4 of them took off up the mountain towards the top of the rock. And I said, I'm going to go down the end of the road. I'll be back in a minute, because I wanted to check out the view. And being 18 years old, I wasn't scared of nothing. So I go heading down the road, and from the moment I left those guys, I'm getting this feeling of being watched. And I'm just like, I'm thinking my friends are probably messing with me or something, and I wasn't gonna act scared or anything. I was just gonna go ahead and do what I'm doing. So I go out and I get out to the end of this road. Now I'm all alone, man. And great view. I'm checking out the view, and man, the back of my neck is the hair on the back of my neck is standing up, and I just got this feeling of being watched. And I just knew that my buddy Les, must be back there trying to mess with me. So I loaded up to spin around real quick so I could catch him. And I got ready, and I just spun around really quick. And when I spun around, it wasn't a cul-de-sac per se, but it kind of opened up right at the end of that little road. And right, back a little ways from me, there was bushes on each side of the road heading into there. And I saw something that was right, if it was a cul-de-sac, it would have been right at the head of the cul-de-sac right there, just bail into the bushes. And, I'm looking at something about, hair about, this long flying off it as it jumps behind the bush. And it's up pretty high. It's probably 6-7 feet off the ground and on down. And I see this, just a black shape, bam, and just hair. And my instinct said bear. Because like I said, I knew about Bigfoot from In Search Of or whatever, but I never thought in a million years I'd find one. You know what I mean? So I'm out there and I was like, it must have been a bear. And at this point I was pretty scared. So I turned around and I started walking back to the rock. And man, when I got to where that thing was, I was looking and I didn't see nothing. But man, I was almost running. I was trying not to let on because I was still thinking that maybe my buddies were out there trying to mess with me. So I was trying not to look like an idiot. So I was just like walking really fast. And man, I had that feeling of being watched like so strong all the way back to Pinnacle Rock. And as I'm walking up the stairs on the side of the rock to go up where they were at, man, that feeling of being watched. And it was just intense. And I get up there and I just say, man, I think I saw a bear. I saw something. It was black and it jumped behind the bushes and it must have been a bear. And the first thing, and I said, no, man, I think it was a bear. It wasn't a monkey.
I think we're having some problems. Ricky, can you hear Dan?
No, I can't hear him.
Your audio. Yeah, hold on, guys. Looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. I'm going to try to take Dan off and then bring him back on. I don't know if Dan can hear me or not.
I don't think he can.
Dan.
There, I got it.
Okay.
I don't know how that got muted, but somehow my mic got muted.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Right,
you got muted. Man, you had me on the edge of my seat, man. How you gonna do that?
All right, where we at? Where was I at when I got muted?
You had gotten back, and one of your buddies said it wasn't a bear; it was a monkey man.
Okay, so then he starts telling us all these stories about Bigfoot, and apparently he'd spent some time out in the woods, and he was telling us that they whoop at you, and they throw rocks and sticks at you and stuff, and we were laughing, and we're just a bunch of kids sitting around, and we thought it was just a big joke. We thought he was messing with us, trying to scare us because we're out in the woods now. And saying, you know, it's not the monkey man, it was just a bear. So we kind of settled in. We're sitting there looking at the view of the lake, and the four of us, the two girls and Michael and myself, were all facing the lake looking out, and Les was sitting on against us looking back towards us, you know, sitting like when we're all sitting Indian style or whatever. And all of a sudden Les jumps up and runs past me. He goes, "Did you see that?" Runs back there, and see what? No, he's all, "There was a little one right there." We're like, "What?" And he said, "A little one looked up over the back of Pinnacle Rock right here and looked at us." And when I ran over there and I seen him scurry down the back of the cliff and bailed around the side back there. And we're like, "No way." We're like, you're totally full of it, man. So we thought at this point that he was just piling story upon story, you know, and we're all laughing, going, "Dude, no way." And he's all, "I swear to God that there was a little Bigfoot right there, and he was looking at us, and he scurried down and when he talks about scurrying down around the backside of that rock, it is a cliff. It is a sheer cliff back there for about at least 60, 80 feet before it gets to just shale all the way down the mountains, almost straight down, you know. And I can't believe that anybody or anything could like scurry at all down that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was, if something did do that, that was damn impressive, I'll tell you. But anyway, so we think Les is full of it. He's telling us a bunch of stories. I just saw a bear. Nothing else is happening. And he's just feeding us full of crap. Basically, that's where we were at that point mentally. So we go down. It starts to get a little bit dark now. Like I say, it was already 5 o'clock when he picked us up. We get up there, it's already like, you know, 6:30, 7. And by the time we're settled in now, it's getting dark. It's probably around 7:30, 8 o'clock. So we run down and we start looking for wood, and we all scurry off for about 10 minutes, getting piles of wood every direction. And we come back and we all have this big pile of wood by the fire. And so Les and I are down here trying to start this fire. We get the little triangle going and stuff, you know, to try to get her going. And we got like one book of matches with like 5 matches. You know, we were not prepared at all. So anyway, we get down there and we both got our hands cupped around it, you know, trying to get this thing going. And we hear this thud, you know, and we're like, "What the heck?" And this big boulder rolls right by our feet. And it landed about 10 feet away, and it rolled right to our feet. And this thing was, man, it must have weighed like 45, 50 pounds. It's this big piece of granite, you know, and it was kind of oblong. It wasn't perfectly round, but man, and we're like, "Where the heck did that come from?" I said, "Dude, that had to have come from it must have fallen off the rock or something." And we're down quite a ways from the rock at this point where we're starting to fire. And he's all, "There's no way. If it fell off the rock, it would have fell way up there, Dan, at where the rock is." Mm-hmm. And we couldn't explain it. And man, this was a big freaking rock to just come out of nowhere and land there. And I don't know where it came from, you know, that direction, you know, it was crazy. So now I'm starting to wonder if maybe Les isn't just telling us stories, you know, because this is kind of little above and beyond now. So anyway, we get the fire going, and we're standing around the fire, and we all get trying to, you know, stay warm and stuff. Like I said, it got a little chilly, and it didn't take long to start getting chilly either. But so we're up here, and all of a sudden Les goes, "Ow, quit throwing rocks." And we all start laughing. We thought he was at it again. We're like, "Man." And a couple minutes later, he's all, "God dang it, I said quit throwing effing rocks." And he was pissed. And we're like, "Dude, you know." Well, he's all, "I swear to God, I'm not messing with you guys. I just got hit twice with freaking rocks." And they weren't big rocks or nothing. They're just little pebbles or whatever, little tiny rocks. But he was freaking out. And we were still thinking he was just, you know, trying to mess with us or something. I mean, it was a long way to get me to think that all of a sudden there was Bigfoot there. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like at a drop of a hat. You're not going to just suggest that Bigfoot's there, and all of a sudden I thought Bigfoot was there. You know what I'm saying? I was not that guy that's just going to all of a sudden jump on board on that. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden Michael goes, dang it, and he jumps, he's jumping around, runs like 10 feet away from where he was standing, and I got hit by a rock, and he's freaking out. And then we were all kind of freaking out because we're going, man, but maybe Les isn't full of it, And then another rock came, and Michael goes and grabs a rock off the ground and throws it back in the bushes. And then another rock came. And then next thing you know, Michael and Les are both throwing rocks into these bushes, and rocks keep coming back out. Now they're throwing at bushes that are probably 40, 50 feet away from where they are. It was like where we were camped, where we were off the left side of the road, just up the hill, just a little bit off of the main road there is where we had our fire. And just on the other side of the road is where these bushes were, where these rocks were coming from. So it wasn't that far. And they're sitting here throwing these rocks and throwing it back. And I'm sitting here just talking to the girls, just trying to ease them down a little bit because they were scared to death.
Yeah.
At this point. And we could hear the rocks hitting the ground when they keep throwing the rocks. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, we didn't, that they were putting us on or something like that. It was, and this went on and on and on for the longest time. And it's like, it felt like we were in a war or something where we couldn't stop what was going on. And it was very uncomfortable, but there was nothing we could do. And we were stuck. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden they go, whoa, did you see him? Did you see him? And they're both going, yeah. It was only like 2-3 minutes later, all of a sudden, Michael, he turns and runs sideways and backwards at the same time, just running, going, twins. And Les is, I saw him too. And they saw two of them. It was the same 12-year-old and then another one on the other side of these bushes from it, both throwing rocks at the same time at them. So it was like, and we didn't see it. Me and the girls, we didn't see it.
Okay, so when he yelled twins, I'm assuming he saw small ones, like juveniles.
Right. It was like the same 12-year-old that they saw, and then his twin along with him. And
okay.
So they said that they saw two about 12-year-old, look like about 12-year-old boys, but Bigfoot, and they were throwing rocks at them.
We another one of our viewers had a question. You guys didn't have any kind of firearm, did you?
We did not. We didn't have a dang thing.
Y'all were extremely unprepared, as you said.
Extremely unprepared.
Okay.
So now, like I said, it feels like we're at war because this is like never ending. The rocks just keep coming. And I'm like, is this going to stop at some point so that we can settle down for the night? Or, I mean, seriously, it's gone on for, it felt like hours and hours. It might've only been 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but it felt like hours. I'm telling you, because maybe because of the stress of the situation of it just keeps on happening. You know what I mean? And it's like I said, something you can't control. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we get back to standing around the fire. Eventually the rock fight stopped, and Les and Michael came back over to the fire with me, and Susan was the girl that went to my school, and I can't remember the other girl's name for the life of me. So anyway, the five of us were sitting around the fire. I just kind of spread around all the way around the fire, and kind of like just talking about it, and like, kind of in shock of what's been going on, and still totally in doubt of what's been going on, and and all of a sudden that's when my friend Les kicked the fire, and it just blazed up, man, big old blazing fire all of a sudden. And that's when Susan and I, she was sitting right next to me, we saw that big guy that I talked about earlier next to the tree, and she says, "Oh my God!" And I said, "Oh, I see it too." And it was that quick. I mean, by the time she said, "Oh my God," it was already jumping behind the tree. You know what I mean? But we'd already seen it for that. Both of us had seen it enough for her to get it out, spit it out. And then like I said,
that was about 30 feet away.
Yeah. And I did mention that we had a flashlight, but when we're getting in this rock fight and it's dark, he got the flashlight out and he had to hit it a couple times and it started up, and it just went, and then he grabbed it again about, 15, 20 minutes later, he grabbed it and tried to turn it on. It was just like nothing. And it just like went down to nothing. It's like, dude, we don't really have a flashlight after all. So again, we were really unprepared. Now we've seen this big old thing. Me and her seen him, and man, he was very intimidating, very scary. They've been having this rock fight with these two little ones. Les said he saw that little one. I saw something when we first got there, and through all of this is pretty interesting too. The one girl, not Susan, but the other girl, never saw a thing. All that stuff happened. This is something that happens with Bigfoot sightings, All that stuff happened around her. She heard the rocks hitting the ground. She saw these guys reacting. You know what I mean? She saw all of our reactions, but she never saw a Bigfoot. Now, I may have seen two. Les may have seen like three or three different instances of seeing them. Michael saw them. He saw the one and the twins, but she never saw. But it was just what direction was she facing at that moment? Just like me with the twins, I wasn't looking that direction, so I didn't see them. If I would have looked back behind my shoulder, they would have been there. That's when, I would have seen them had I been looking that way at that time, but I wasn't. And that's real, indicative of Bigfoot sightings and just Bigfoot experiences. I mean, they're really super good and stealthy at hiding. I mean, it's really rare for anybody to see them, period. But it's very possible that you could have a party of people and some people could not even see what the other people saw,
That's right.
So anyway, I'll get back to it. I feel like I'm just talking your ear off, but I know you want to hear the story, right?
Yeah. The floor is yours, buddy. You're doing fine. Just everyone's here waiting just to hear what happened. So yeah, just keep going. Okay,
so now we're there. It's late. It's late. It's been dark for quite a while. And it's time to go to bed. And he's got like a blanket and two sleeping bags. And he offered up the sleeping bag and said he was going to just use the blanket in the Jeep and that we could try all use those sleeping bags. So we put both of them together and all four of us tried to get inside of these two sleeping bags. And it just wasn't working. There was just not enough room for four people inside of two zipped up sleeping bags, even though we were just skinny little kids. So Michael, he gets frustrated and says, "Man, I'm going to go to the Jeep." So he goes to the Jeep and gets under part of that blanket with Les on the other side, on the other chair. And so I'm the lucky guy that got to sleep in the sleeping bags with the two girls. But man, I'm telling you, I did not do much sleeping. I was so at first I was just scared something else was going to happen, because all this stuff kept happening. But then started hearing these footsteps, and like the rock is up there, the road is behind us, and on either side it's forest. And on both sides, all through the night, I kept hearing these big footsteps, and just like walking, these huge footsteps. And I'm just like nervous as hell, thinking that something's going to come and attack us anytime, And then, I must have fallen asleep just right before. Oh, and good point. I would have hit the road running too. When we still had the flashlight going, I was telling Les, I will walk down in front of the Jeep and direct you, and after the flashlight died, I was still saying, dude, I will walk down in front of the Jeep and just tell you where to go. We need to get off this mountain. And he refused to drive that Jeep with no headlights, and it was probably the smart thing to do. And like I said, it was a 4-wheel drive road getting out there. It would have been really dangerous, but we wanted off that damn mountain. I'm telling you, and then when we did wake up in the morning, and like I say, I must have got a little bit of sleep because I did wake up, and I was just I was still in total denial of what happened. Because again, I thought Bigfoot was a big ape. What I saw was not a big ape. It was like a big wild man, you know? So I'm questioning what I saw. What in the heck was it, you know? And I'm not going there yet saying it's Bigfoot. I don't know what the hell it was, you know, at that time. And scared to death, get up and I said, did you guys hear those big footsteps, man? There must have been some elk or something. And Les is all, it wasn't elk, it was the monkey man. Don't you remember all that stuff that went on? And I'm like, well, yeah, I remember all that stuff that went on, but I still wouldn't have thought it was the monkey man. You know what I mean? My mind, your mind always goes to something else. Like I said, a bear. It was a bear. And then I'm thinking it must have been some elk walking around or something. You know, your mind always goes to something that's logical, you know, and it was so illogical. And then, you know, and when, like I say, we were just waking up and we all got up, grabbed up them sleeping bags and stuff. And we were just waiting in the Jeep to be able to leave. It's still dark and we're just waiting. And then that very first little bit of light, he starts up the Jeep and we're driving down the road, just creeping at first. And then there's a little more light, you know, and then we get to going down the road. It was like none of us said a word that morning all the way. We were all just totally in shock. We didn't even know what the heck what just happened. We all kept looking back the whole time, afraid something was going to come running up behind us and grab us and do something. You know, it was scary as hell. I was never so glad to see a highway in my life as when we got to the bottom of that mountain and got on the highway and getting back to town, man. I mean, I'm telling you, and it was something that totally warped my brain and changed my life. I did not want to tell anybody about this stuff. I told my best friend, you know, years later, but Les brought it up at a party just a couple months after that and said, hey, Dan, remember the Bigfoot? And we saw it. And I was just like, oh, yeah, yeah. And I just walked away. It's like I didn't want no part of anybody knowing anything about me having that experience back then. And it was years and years and years later, probably 2010, 2011, before I heard some other people tell stories when I finally found out there was a Bigfoot community and I'm telling other stories or hearing other stories. And I hear that other people seeing something that looks human-like. And that's when I could finally put two and two together. And I could finally, you know, say that, yes, that was a Bigfoot encounter that I had, you know, and actually let it settle in my mind that way.
So you said that was around 2010. Is that when you started to do your research into the subject?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And at first, I was in Idaho at the time. And at first, I was just armchair researcher. You know, I started up the Big Truth page. I started up my Big Truth YouTube channel so I could tell my own stories and stories of friends of mine when I was growing up. So that's what I did. I started up that Big Truth YouTube channel and I told the story I just told. And then that was the main idea. I started the channel right there just so I could get my own story out. And
okay, yeah, guys, that's his channel right there on YouTube. Y'all go check him out and show him some love. And we appreciate you coming on tonight, Dan, and sharing everything. But yeah, guys, go check him out. Go check him out. Dan's got some more to share with us. Where'd you go, Dan?
I'm there.
There you are. There you are.
I'm there.
Okay, so yeah, you started doing your research under Big Truth around 2010. So what happens next?
Yeah, and then so I started up the Facebook page, and I became like a news site. You know, I started just grabbing up stories all around the internet and putting it on my page all the time. And I'm still doing that. You know, it's a good source for, and I kind of weed through it and try to get the bull crap out of there and only post stuff that looks like it might be legit, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of fun. And then I got a couple groups on Facebook as well. And I've got a blog where I post some special stuff now and then, like sometimes a friend of mine or myself will write up an article or something. I'll post that, or sometimes, you know, I'll put like a grouping of videos or something on one blog post. And that is bigtruth.blogspot.com. And if anybody wants to check out the blog. And
okay,
but
so
back to the research.
Hey, Wayne, put that up there, bud.
I'm doing it right now.
Blogspot.com.
Okay. .com.
Perfect.
All right.
That's it.
Guys, check that out. Check that out. Help Dan out.
So, and so that's in 2010, I started this stuff. And then in 2013, I was lucky enough to move to Oregon, and in Southern Oregon, right next to the Cascades, in a little town called Klamath Falls. And then I started looking at the BFRO, and I'm looking at my county's reports and the neighboring counties' reports. And then I finally had an opportunity to get out in the field and actually go out and see some stuff, which was great. And there's a few things that I looked for, which it's just common sense. And just from my armchair research, I figured out a couple keys. One thing is water. There has to be water nearby. And one thing that I found really useful is to go where people don't like to go, or can't hardly go, where it's really difficult for people to go. And someplace where it's really green, old growth forest is best. You know what I mean? Or something that hasn't been logged for 20, 30 years, is your best bet. I have walked miles and miles and miles through recent timber cuttings, and there's no evidence of Bigfoot in there at all. All the evidence I always find, a lot of it is usually aged, but it's in the old growth forest. It really is. And so old growth, water, and someplace it's difficult to get to. It's like steep terrain is a real good spot. And someplace where there's caves around is a good spot. But seclusion is the best thing, something that's really hard to get to. So,
okay, Daryl, you just mentioned caves. Now, what is your feeling on these creatures? Do you actually feel that these creatures do use the cave areas?
well, with the theories, there's like fingers that go off different directions with theories. And, you think this is a possibility, this is a possibility, this is a possibility. And you think down those alleys. And that's definitely an alley that I think about a lot. I'm not convinced. I'm not persuaded, but there's too much, like cross evidence together, like Bigfoot spottings in areas where there's lots of caves. And even in my hot spot up there in the Cascades, it's right next to a volcano where there's lava tubes. There's definitely caves that are, not known by people. And it's a good temperature in the wintertime. If somebody could actually live down there, it's doable when there's, 6, 8, 10 feet of snow outside, if they were doing it right. And, and people think, well, there's no food down there. Well, all the ground squirrels are down there. You know what I mean? And they're all over the place out there. So in the wintertime, there's stuff. If they were to live, now, like I say, it's like different alleys you go down. And if they do live underground, there's definitely opportunity in the spots where I go, where I've seen them.
Yeah, I'm glad Ricky asked that. That seems to be a touchy subject and kind of a hot topic on our side here. People will argue, till they're blue in the face about caves. I tend to believe that there is a connection to caves, but people will, man, they get passionate about it for some reason. Like they'll call you every name in the book. You're crazy. No, Bigfoot do not have anything to do with caves. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting to talk about.
Yeah. Well, maybe those are the same people that keep calling it their house when they see a stick structure, and I'm a firm believer in stick structures because I find them, and there's lots of things that I found that they could not have been done by nature. They had to have been done by hands manipulating stuff. But I've never found a house. Well, I think it's some form of art a lot of times, or just signals to their own kind, like the Native Americans used to use, like stick structures and signals on trails. So when you got to a certain spot, it would tell you if there's a fork in the trail. It would tell you if there was prey in the area, certain game. And I do believe that Bigfoot does make stick structures. They're not ever meant for us. You know, we find them, we see them, but it's definitely a way of communicating for them. And I can tell you about something that I think is kind of a breakthrough. I found a series of these breaks that the only way you can explain it is if you didn't know, you never learned in school or in driver's ed what a stop sign was, but you sat there in a chair for a couple hours next to a stop sign in a busy intersection. You're going to know what that stop sign means, right? You don't need somebody to tell you. Mm-hmm. And it was as clear as day. These breaks were all in line, and there's a big pond over here. It's actually like snow melt ponds. There's one over here and one over here, and it went out to a point. And right at that area where it went out to a point, there was all these breaks. And there was actually a couple of them there was two of them that crossed, and they were both double breaks, up, over, and back down, up, over, back down. And like I say, there was all these breaks that were right in a row. And I'm telling you, it's saying dead end. It's telling them as they're coming, this is a migration route, I would assume. And as they're coming up through this corridor, you know, by the creek where, like I say, it's snow melt right there, but it's part of this creek system. As they're coming up through there, that's a place where they get bottlenecked and they're stuck, where they're going to have to either leave tracks out there in the mud, or it's just, you know, going to be rough going. And I'm telling you, it's plain as day that those markers are telling them, stop. This is a dead end. This is not, you don't want to go down here. You need to go around. You know, and it's like I said, it was as plain as a stop sign. It really was.
That's interesting. I think we can all agree that these things that they're communicating with each other. You know what they're telling each other. We will never know, obviously. But yeah, like Daryl said, Daryl we've had on a couple of weeks. He said they're territorial markers, and I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't mean like they're not telling you stay out or I'll kill you. They're just saying this is where our tribe is at. I have found a couple really interesting ones where there'd be all these different sticks around one main tree. A whole bunch of sticks around this tree. Now, one of them would be another tree, huge, you know, another, like I say, another tree leaned up, and then all these other different size and a whole bunch of little ones. And in my mind, that's like their tribal tree. Like they're saying, you know, the big chief put up his big stick, and then everybody put up their stick. And it's like telling you as you go into that area that this represents us. This is how many there is, you know, and it's just a theory, but, you know, it's compelling. Mm-hmm. and I found another spot that was weird as heck. It was just a little clearing out in the woods. It was probably a snow melt patch or something where you know it gets all water in there. But it was late summer. I get in here, and it's like a perfect circle with these trees around there, and all the trees around it had a stick laying up against it, and it was the weirdest thing. It was like, what the heck is this? And another thing, I found I call it a leaner. I found them all over the place where I'm at, and I theorize they may be ladders for the young ones to be able to get up in the tops where all the thick brush is up in the pine trees. You know, there might be 20, 30 feet of just bare trunk, and then you got all the branches are up high. So that's kind of a theory I'm running on. But I went through an area that was all burned. Everything is burned, and there was a brand new nice stick leaned up against a tree in there where, like I say, everything else was burned. And there was one just right down the way that had been there before the fire came through, and it was burned up just like the tree next to it, you know? Yeah. So it was like, something's come through here since the fire and put this stick here. And who would just do that out of the blue? And who's going to carry the stick in? Because this burn went on for a ways, you know? So this stick had to come from somewhere, not burn. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, there is a book out there. Is on Sasquatch structures, North American Sasquatch structures. It's written by Christopher Noel. Do you know who Christopher Noel
Oh
is?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have a copy of that book, and for every researcher, investigator out there, I highly recommend picking up that book. It's so fascinating. He gives pictures of, well, illustrations of the top 50 most common Sasquatch structures in North America.
Oh, that's
It's
cool.
I highly, highly recommend everybody picking it up. I have a copy and I take it out in the field with me. Dan, now we got about 10 minutes left, buddy. Uh, how long was it when you started in doing your research in 2010 until you had your next encounter? When I say encounter, I mean visual encounter, and what happened there?
That would be in 2016, and I was with my partner Ed Brown. He's done a bunch of interviews on my YouTube channel, and he's a great interviewer. And we interviewed all the top names in Bigfoot. Man, it's pretty cool. But you know, Ed knows everybody. But Ed and I were meeting up at my spot up by 4 Mile Lake here in Southern Oregon. We were going to film a movie. And you know, it never really happened, but we got a lot of footage. So anyway, we got out there the very first day. We get to the campsite, and it's like a remote camp. There's one little bathroom, and there's like a pond that's meant to be like a horse watering pond, and then just a couple spots. They're not even like formal campsites. They're just like spots. And there's one old picnic table out there that's in one of the spots next to the pond. We got out there. And there was one old couple that was over at the far end of the pond in an RV, and that was it in that whole spot besides us. And we went to the spot where the picnic table was. So we get there, and we just get everything, you know, kind of settled in. I think I made my tent. And then we went back, and we're just sitting there and start talking at the picnic table. And we hadn't been there but half hour, 45 minutes. We just pulled up. And we're sitting there, no cameras going, no recorders going. We were loaded for bear. We had so much stuff, but nothing was running at the time, of course. So I'm sitting here talking to Ed, and all of a sudden this old guy over here behind us, I guess they were drinking or something, and he let out this holler, like, oh, or something, I don't know. But it was loud, and it echoed off the back of that pond. There was a big bank on the other side. And when he yelled, that sound hit that and came right back at me. So it sounded like it was across the pond. So I just instinctively looked across the pond. And when I looked, I saw this Bigfoot. And this sucker, we did measurements and stuff. And this sucker was about 9 feet tall. And he just took off walking just like Patty. There was about a 6-foot gap in the trees. And he was hiding behind one tree, and he just just took off walking. When I saw him across that gap. And I mean, there was a log across in front that was blocking maybe up to his knees. You know, other than that, I seen like his whole body walking, just all one color. And it was the strangest thing because it looked weird. It didn't look right. But it also, my brain was telling me it had to be a hiker or a person. And I'm looking and looking and looking, waiting for him to come out on the other side over there. And nobody ever came out. And we're really remote. We're about 3 miles from the campground that's at the lake. Then this is a really, you got to go off the main road a couple miles. It's way out in the middle of nowhere, basically. So people don't just wander into camp out there. You're remote, you know what I mean? So it was really strange. So, you know, I got excited. I told Ed all about it and seen him. And we went over there looking for footprints and stuff. And if you ever been to Oregon, man, especially on the top of the mountain, it's nothing but rocks and pine needles. You know, it's super hard to find tracks. But anyway, we went over there to see if we could find anything. And then we moseyed on down the hill after that. And we were exploring a little bit. And we turned around and come back. And Ed saw something. He saw something go right behind this tree. And he said it was walking up. And oddly enough, he said the only thing he could say was that it looked like an upright bear. You know, he only saw it like from here back, going behind this tree. And then he was looking and looking and looking and never saw it again. But the sunlight hit it, and it was kind of a brown color, he said, kind of a black and brown. And but he said it was the back was hunched over like a bear would be. You know, that's why he described it as kind of like a bear. But again, we went up that direction and stuff. We never saw no bear. We didn't see anything. We couldn't find anything.
Now, how long had he seen it? He said it looked like a bear on, you know, walking upright. How long of a visual was his?
Oh, it was just for a split second, you know, and that was just the best he could describe it, because he said he kept saying about the arched back. Its back was like really bent over, you know, and that doesn't mean it was a bear.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. I mean, it could have been
but
trying
it
to like
doesn't
hide.
mean it was a Bigfoot either, but we sure
Exactly.
didn't find a bear, and we went right up towards there, you know, and I would think I would have seen a bear run off, if nothing else. So
Okay.
that was a pretty interesting day, and that was just one of many.
In that area,
What?
Dan, did y'all find any type structures, any footprints, anything that would make you believe that it was a Sasquatch using the area?
Oh yeah, yeah. We have found some footprints. I have got video of handprints 2 different times. One is interesting enough. Something wiped the trail clean. We couldn't even see our own tracks from when we walked in, and there was a big log across the road right there, the trail, and there was these big handprints on this log from the dust from wiping the trail, which was really interesting. And then, speaking of structures, I found the best freaking structure ever. It's so big, it couldn't have been done unless equipment did it. It's way back there. There's no road, no nothing. I mean, I'm talking 20 men couldn't have done it. It's this huge log that's weaved between 3 trees like this, and it was shoved up in there and then pulled down, wedged between those trees. And you could see the bark scrapes from where it was pulled down. We went back the next year, almost the same exact time of year, and something had grabbed it and pulled it down again, like another foot. And you could see the old bark scrapes, and then you could see the brand new bark scrapes. And we actually found handprints on the log. It was like it had just happened before we came. It was a little bit of rain. There was all this pollen all everywhere from the pine trees. And that pollen, the layer of pollen on there, whatever grabbed that thing left these handprints. And we measured from here. We could measure, you know, to about here. And then we had to extrapolate to try to get a measurement, you know, what it would have been. And those handprints would have been 12 inches from here to here. Huge handprint. And you could see 4 fingers over the top, coming over the top of that log, where something just came up and grabbed it and pulled it down.
Dan, did you happen to catch our show last week?
No, I didn't.
We had Mr. Daryl Owen on, and he has one of the only 4 known handprints in existence, and
Nice.
confirmed handprints, and he showed it. Trying to get it to pull up right here. Okay, yeah, it's not gonna let me show it anyway. But how his measurements, I believe, were, I was doing all that to tell you, his measurements were about 1 foot, just like yours.
That's big. That's twice as big as you or I. I mean, that's big.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Good stuff. So we're coming up on an hour. We're right at it. Dan, we appreciate you stopping by, sharing your stories, man. I really do. And if you don't mind, I know you got some other sightings to go over. We would love to have you back if you would.
Oh, I'd love to come back, and I'd like to talk a little bit about Florida trip we took this last summer, man. It was crazy.
Go ahead, man.
Crazy.
Go ahead.
Well, we don't really have too much time right now, but I'll tell you one thing. I saw physical evidence with my own eyes of a portal, where portals open. This one supposedly opens right there. I could see it on the ground. I could see about a 3-foot circle around where there was hardly any vegetation at all. And then about 9 feet out from the center, there was about a 1-foot strip in a perfect circle all the way around where there was hardly any vegetation. And if I was standing right there and I knew exactly where it was, and I yelled up to them at the house and I asked them if that's where the portal was, and they said that's exactly where it is. Couldn't believe it.
Wow.
That's just,
Well,
and we had a bunch of crazy stuff go on. So I'd like to talk about that trip a little bit next time.
well, I'll tell you what. I'll contact you after the show, right after the show, and we'll set up another time for you to come back on if that's all right. We're booked the next few weeks, but yeah, I'd love to set up another time for you to come back, talk about that and anything else.
All right, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, I'll get with you right after the show, buddy.
All right.
All right, I appreciate it, Ricky. You got anything before we let Dan go?
And Dan, man, it's very pleased to have you on tonight. Want to appreciate it, or just tell you we appreciate you coming on. And like Wayne said, just book another date and come back and share the rest of the evidence you got. I know our viewers will be more than pleased to hear it.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, you guys.
All right, Dan. Have a good night, buddy.
You too.
All right. That was a good guess, wasn't it, Ricky?
Sure was.
Yeah, Dan's a good guy. We've been talking a little bit on Facebook back and forth, and yeah, I'll talk to him here in a minute. We'll get a part 2 set up for him.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out his story on the portal.
Yeah, that's
really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've always made it known that that's a little bit outside of what I tend to believe, but I know enough to know that I don't know anything. So I'm open-minded. There could be something to it. I do believe that Bigfoot is a biological creature, but no, what do I know?
Well, like I've always said, I always felt that I've had encounters with these things, and honestly, I think if you cut a Sasquatch, he's gonna bleed. So I'm kind of like you are about it. I think they're biological. I think they're things of this earth. I've really never seen any evidence, pointing in any other direction as far as that's what I've encountered myself. But like you say, who knows?
Yeah, you're right, buddy. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for stopping in, hanging out with us for an hour or so. Want to remind everybody, check out our website, mannimalresearch.com. Report your encounters there. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We can keep bringing you guys some more interesting stuff and some good guests. And again, go check out Dan's show here on YouTube, and he's also on Facebook. It's all under Big Truth. There's his blog as well. Y'all give Dan some love, and he's going to be back to share some more stuff with us. Ricky, you got anything else, buddy?
Folks, as always, if you're out in the woods, whatever, you encounter one of these things, please just back out. As I always say at this end of the show, if you encounter one of these things, you don't know what it's going to take to push it to the point that it could hurt you. So please just back out of an area if you encounter one of them, and live to see another day.
That's right. Well said, Ricky. All right. Appreciate everybody stopping by and hanging out with us. Y'all be good to each other. Till next week. See you later.
See you later, folks.